All right, welcome back to the channel, everybody. I'm an avid herpetologist, coming back with another deep dive deck profile today. Now, I don't know if you guys can tell or not, but it sounds a little more buttery smooth than normal. And that is thanks to an extremely generous donation from one of my subscribers. I want to give a huge shout out and a huge thank you to Zeke from the Coyotemon Plays YouTube channel for giving me a very generous donation going directly towards my very first entry-level streaming microphone. I understand that my audio has not been super spectacular. Full disclosure, it may not sound 100% phenomenal on this video either. I'm not joking when I spent the last 3 hours tinkering with settings for this mic, trying to find a good spot where things would sound all right. Hopefully this video is going to have audio that is a little less offensive than my previous videos. You may notice also I'm trying something new out with my lighting and my video quality today, so hopefully that will also be a little bit improved. I was absolutely genuine when I said I'm interested in improving on how my video quality looks and sounds. Hopefully this is going to be a step in the right direction, but please give me some feedback on what you guys think of the new lighting. Hopefully there will be less shadows this time. Video quality will hopefully be a little cleaner, and absolutely hoping that the audio quality will be much better on the stream as well. But again, if there are things that you guys know to improve on those things further, please let me know down in the comments. I will again happily continue to adjust. I'm going to try to make sure we are continuing to move in a positive direction where we can get the video quality continuing to move upward instead of downward. With that, the video we're going to be doing today is going to be another archetype deep dive. On one of my earliest videos, I actually had a comment from one of you guys asking if I could do a deep dive video on the Diaboromon archetype. And got a soft spot for black decks, of course, but this is a very special black deck. This is a huge fan favorite for very obvious reasons. The very first Digimon movie that ever came out, debatably the best Digimon movie ever, or at least the best segment of that movie, is the Digimon short Our War Game, which of course features the very first ever appearance of Omnimon, as well as the primary antagonist, which is Diaboromon. This is basically a computer virus that's trying to wreck the net, ends up sending nukes out to try to take out the Digidestin. It's a wild movie, has really great animation. If you've never seen Our War Game, I highly recommend watching it. It is super entertaining. And as a result of that, though, there's a lot of nostalgia and a lot of fandom around the Diaboromon archetype and the Diaboromon Digivolution line. So how could I not do a deep dive video around this archetype? It is extremely unique in the Digimon TCG in the sense that it is currently, to date, the only deck in the entire game that uses tokens as a mechanic. Very, very unique, and it's an absolutely flavorful win in relation to how Diaboromon was in the anime. In the movie, Diaboromon's final gimmicks is creating multiple copies of itself. Basically, it clones itself over and over and over again until there are millions of them, and it takes the very first appearance of Omnimon to actually wipe him out. So the entire deck basically has revolved around digivolving up into Diaboromon, making a bunch of Diaboromon tokens, and using those to generate advantage and ultimately win you the game. And we can do that in a couple of really cool ways. So to begin, there's really only 2 eggs you're going to want to run in this deck, so pretty easy there off the bat. There are 2 copies currently of Sumamon that exist. Sumamon from BT2 and Sumamon from BT5, which is really the primary 2 sets that a lot of the Diaboromon support came from. The very first Sumamon says, on your turn, while you have another Digimon in play with the same name as this Digimon, it gets plus 2,000 DP. So again, playing around those tokens. Since you are making Diaboromon tokens, you're probably always, in your level 6 plays, going to have multiple copies in play because you're going to have your primary stack and then all the tokens that stack has made. So you're going to be basically just always be getting, at the Diaboromon level, plus 2,000 DP, which is not a irrelevant amount. 2,000 is definitely above par for the most part. And our other Sumamon egg says, when attacking once per turn, if this Digimon has unidentified in its types, trigger draw 1. So, spoiler, all of the Digimon that are going to be in the Diaboromon line are unidentified. Again, going along with the lore of Diaboromon, he was a computer virus. He was not a natural-born Digimon. It was an egg that was created, attacked by a virus, and it mutated into this line, which is kind of cool. It's a very neat backstory, definitely unique among a lot of the villains in the shows. But basically, this egg is there to ensure that no matter whether you're at rookie, champion, ultimate, or mega level, you are always going to be able to draw cards when you're attacking. So it's going to be your primary source of card advantage. Really, which one of these eggs you want to run is going to be up to choice. Depending on how you want to build this deck, you can build it very controlly, you can build it OTK oriented, and depending on the direction you want to go in, the ratios that you use these two eggs is kind of up to you. But I would personally suggest running 5 eggs regardless, whether you want to do a 3-2 split, 4-1 split. I highly recommend running all 5 just because there's going to be times where you just want to Digivolve, and I personally think that both of these eggs are going to be useful regardless of how you build your deck. So just something to think about. I would personally run a total of 5 eggs, and however you want to split between these two is entirely up to your personal choice. But we're going to go ahead and move on up into our rookies. Now, much like our egg base, we do have our primary rookie set, which is going to be 3 different variations of the Digimon Caramon. Now, this is the rookie level of the Diaboromon line, go figure. And each one of these cards is absolutely vital to the strategy, in my opinion. Each one of these cards does something super different from the others, and they all have an important role to play in trying to unify this deck together. Unfortunately, one of the big weaknesses Diaboromon has as an archetype, it tends to be a little inconsistent, and it's also a bit slow. The ceiling for this deck is actually very high. You can OTK people pretty consistently. You can create some insanely wide boards, but it does require a decent amount of setup. And currently this deck doesn't have a whole lot in the way of tutoring. We do have one tutor, though. That's going to be this first Caramon I'm going to talk about right here. This is the BT5 Caramon. Now, this Caramon has an on-play effect, the only Caramon with an ability that's not an inheritable, by the way. On play, reveal 5 cards from the top of your deck. You can add any Digimon with unidentified in its type and an Errata Sonata, which is our Tamer, from among them to your hand, and then of course you put the rest on the bottom of your deck in any order. So looking at the top 5 does make this a very powerful searcher. This Caramon is definitely going to be your best play starter in the sense that you will ideally be getting 2 cards off of it, of course. A lot of the modern tutors let you add Digimon from the archetype as well as a named tutor, or not a named tutor, a named Tamer. And this guy is no different. He's actually one of the earlier Digimon tutors to actually be able to do that. Now, we'll, of course, talk about Errata Sonata later. You are, of course, going to want to run 4 copies of Errata, no matter what your Diaboromon deck looks like. But again, we'll talk about him in a little bit. But I highly recommend running, honestly, 4 copies of all of these guys. If you want to run extra rookies, you can. If you want to like cut a copy or 2 of one of these for other rookies, you can. But me personally, the build that I run 4 copies of each one of these just because they are the best. Now, technically speaking, there is another promo Caramon. I do not have him just because I don't really find much of a use for him in this build. It just has a generic inheritable where on your opponent's turn, the Digimon gains 1000 DP. Not super relevant for any of the strategies this deck really wants to be doing. So we're just omitting that one. These are the 3 big ones you're going to want to be using. Now, the second Caramon is actually the BT2 Caramon, the first one in the line. It has an inheritable where whenever you play another Digimon with the same name as this Digimon, trigger draw 1. A couple of things that are important to note about this effect. First of all, it is not once per turn. So if you Digivolve up into Diaboromon and you make 3 tokens, you will be drawing 3 cards because you just had 3 Digimon with the same name come into play. And yes, playing them as tokens is still considered playing them, so you will draw cards every time you generate a token that is of a Diaboromon. It's also important to notice that if you Digivolve up into just a champion level, and then of course you just play another champion, which you'll see why that's relevant later. We are playing some cards that let us cheat into play other things. That will also allow you to draw cards. It doesn't have to be Diaboromon making tokens. If you just hard play other champions or other ultimates while it's in that stage, you'll of course draw those cards as well. Now, our final Caramon is our biggest OTK enabler, and I say that kind of loosely because this deck doesn't have a lot of OTK enabling, but this is definitely one of the best buff effects that you're going to find, not just in Diaboromon, but honestly in the game, which is kind of cool. The potential, the DP gain that this guy gives you is so far above any other inheritable you will find. And that's one of the things you'll start to notice about Diaboromon. The reason this deck can actually somehow steal wins, even here in the BT9 format, is because it has incredibly powerful effects. That is how this deck is able to get away with existing, despite not having a lot of search power, a lot of consistency, a lot of speed. It's because they make up for that by having these insanely powerful effects. Drawing a bunch of cards, and this one, this EX1 Caramon, actually gives that Digimon plus 1,000 DP for each other Digimon in play that shares a name with it. So again, if you're going up into Diaboromon and you make tokens for every other one of those Diaboromon that you have in play, plus 1,000 DP. This can easily provide an extra 3 to 4, maybe even 5,000 DP, even more depending on how much time you had to set up. It is an incredibly powerful effect. And again, when you're going for an OTK, one of our Diaboromon variants is going to, of course, be better than that than the others, and we'll get to that. But this is going to be one of the best effects that you're going to want underneath of that guy. He is going to basically make sure that you do not die to a security check. Most of our Diaboromons are either 10,000 or 11,000, so getting above that is going to be super important, which is, again, also where our Sumamon can come into play to help you get across a lot of risky checks. So these are going to be our primary 3 Caramon. Now, if you do want to be spicy and run other rookies, the other options are probably not going to surprise anyone. They're just the generically good black rookies, which are going to be Chikurimon, which is a security threat. If they check in security, you can de-digivolve one of their Digimon. Super cool. It's always been a relevant card. It will continue to be a relevant card into future formats. It really just depends on what you want to do with your flex slots. There are going to be a pretty decent number of flex slots in any Diaboromon list that you're running. So if you decide that you want to do that with some utility rookies, you consider Chikurimon, or of course Chumon, which is currently Black's premier memory blocker. So this is what's going to help be that floodgate that'll prevent your opponent from gaining memory off of memory boosts and things like that. So this is going to be pretty much the 5 I think that most people are going to be looking at for the rookie lineups. You may see some other spice plays. Maybe someone wants to try Toy Agumon with Reboot Inheritable, things like that. There are, of course, other options, but I personally think these are going to be the best 5 rookies if you are looking to build a good, powerful Diaboromon deck. You're going to want to stick to these. Like I mentioned, my rookie suit is really just 4 copies of each of these 3 Caramon. I don't actually run these other 2, but again, if you are more concerned about your lower line, you may decide that you want to be running these guys just as a little bit of extra defense or a little extra ability to slow the game down so you can get into your powerful later game plays. It's entirely up to you, but these are what I'm going to be using for my personal list. So moving on up into our champions, unsurprisingly, we're still going to be sticking with the unidentified theme. However, we are going to be looking at 5 different copies of the same Digimon this time, and that is our champion level, which is Korosarimon. We have 5 different versions of Korosarimon to choose from. Some of these are actually more vital, in my opinion, than others, but honestly, I think all 5 of these variations have different levels of viability, again, depending on how you want to build your deck. So to begin with, this one I think is probably the most important of the ones that you're going to be looking at. This is the BT2 Korosari. He has an inheritable that says when you play another Digimon with the same name as this Digimon, again, token generation, gain a memory. So once again, if you are Digivolving up into a Diaboromon and you make 3 tokens, it's not once per turn. That is an instant 3 memory. That's going to go a long way to making sure that you can actually do that final push to make the OTK on that turn. The next Korosari we're going to be looking at has a when Digivolving effect, where if you do not already have an Arata Sonata in play, you can then play one from your hand without paying its memory cost. So this is another card I talked a little bit about in my 5 wish list things, and when I was talking about Tyrannomon support, the Tyrannomon archetype, in my opinion, and there's a lot of other decks that do it, but having the ability to put Tamers into play on Digivolve seems to be a really good effect, and it's one that we're starting to see a lot more often. It's definitely nice, especially when you are working with a setup deck, where if you're ladder climbing, being able to just automatically put your Tamers that you need for setup into play anyways, again, is really good to kind of roll compress and speed the deck up a little bit. You're saving memory every time you do that. Arata is a 3 memory tamer, so basically for the cost of 2, you get to go up into your Korosarimon and potentially also put another 3 free memory into play, which is really helpful. Now the inheritable for this particular Korosari, this is the BT5 Korosarimon, is all of your other Digimon with the same name as this Digimon gain Rush. So again, this is basically just saying that anytime a Digimon with the same name as whatever that stack's top piece is, whenever they come into play, they can attack immediately. They don't get summoning sickness. This is, again, another way that you can trigger a potential OTK. Going up into your Diaboromon, smashing through security, and all of the tokens that you've made can now swing in without having to wait the turn. So it basically lets you go from 0 to holy crap, in a single turn. It's going to enable that ability to just blitz your opponent down, deal a ton of damage out of nowhere. So this is another super important card. Now, these two Kurosari actually differ from the other three because they cost 5 memory. These cost 5 to play, have 4, they all have, no, they don't all. These two have 4,000 DP, and they both cost 2 to Digivolve. The reason that's relevant is we are, I'm going to mention again later in the options section of the video that one of the things that I personally have enjoyed playing a lot in the Diaboromon lists is Pride Memory Boost, which lets you bring in Digimon with a play cost of 4 or less from the top of your library into play. These guys do not hit that threshold of 4 memory, which is a little unfortunate, but I also think that these two are potentially the most powerful of the inheritables that you're going to want to see in your Diaboromon stack. So again, balance is kind of up to you in terms of how you want to build your deck and ratios, but in my opinion, these are definitely the two best. Now, a very close third best is going to be this guy right here. This is our EX1 Kurosarimon. Now, this Kurosarimon has an inheritable that says, on your turn once per turn, when one of your other Digimon with the same name as this Digimon is deleted, unsuspend this Digimon. Which, again, very cool. So, basically, you can swing in, deal damage. Then, if your big stack Diaboromon survives, then you start swinging with your tokens. Their tokens are only 3,000 DP each. So there's a good chance they're going to die when they check security. Well, if you've already done a safe swing in with your tokens, that token would then die. You can then unsuspend your Diaboromon and get another swing. So you're probably already starting to see how the deck ties together, and we're only at the champion level. So it's very cool, and it is a very unique playstyle from a lot of other decks. Like I said, token generation and focusing on Digimon with the same name. Basically, the whole idea is that this is a virus that is spreading, and it benefits from having other copies of it around. Super, super flavorful. I love things like that. Now, our next Kurosaris, both of these are actually promos. So they may be a little more challenging to get a hold of. And honestly, between these two, I think they both have decent amounts of use. I do think that they both have play. This Kurosari probably has more play when you're talking Pride Memory Boost, but this one probably has more play when you're talking OTKs. Again, depending on how you want to build your personal Diaboromon deck, you're going to want to change your ratios around. Unlike a lot of the other decks, including both of the other deep dives I did with both Machinedramon and Blackwork Greymon, there's a lot less of a cut and dry, copy-paste method of building the deck. Like Blackwork Greymon as an example, there were different routes you could go, but there were pretty obvious things that you would want to be running depending on which route you decided to take it. Diaboromon is a little bit different. You kind of want to swap around and change up different ratios and different inheritables and things like that, depending on the direction you want to go in. Because as you're starting to see, a lot of these, they're very similar effects, but they also have very different applications, is I think the best way to put it. But this Kurosarimon is one of the earlier promos. It is also 4 to play, 5,000 DP, 2 to Digivolve. It has blocker, and when attacking, lose 2 memory. So it's basically a very simple early Digimon TCG days blocker. It's only 4 to play, which is pretty cool. 4 to play blockers are always nice to see, but it does, of course, have that on attack issue. But the general reason that you would be playing this is if you are, for instance, playing Pride Memory Boost, you'd have the ability to bring in a blocker off of that effect, which is very nice. The other Kurosarimon tends to be a little bit more popular. It is also 4 to play, 5,000 DP. Has an all turns effect where all of your Digimon with the same name as this Digimon gain Decoy, Black, and White. That does matter because, awkwardly enough, even though our entire base of eggs all the way through ultimates are all black, our Diaboromons are all white. So it does have the ability to sacrifice itself. Anything that has the same name as this can sacrifice itself to save any of your other black or white Digimon, which is very neat. Again, I love to see that. It's a very unique effect, and it's a very cool way of applying that decoy mechanic. Funny enough, it actually has good synergies with our EX1 Kurosarimon. Not very often you're going to see them both in the same stack, but as we go up into our ultimates, you'll see that it is a possibility, because there are fun things you can use with this deck to kind of combine some of these inheritables to create even scarier Diaboromon stacks. So with that, we're going to go ahead and move up into our ultimate levels. We've covered our Kurosarimons. Now we're going to go into our level 5s, which is going to be Infirmons. So we have a total of 3 of these guys that I think are worth playing. Again, there is a 4th copy in existence. However, I don't think that the 4th copy has nothing to do with this archetype. It's a 7 to play, 7,000 DP, on play, de-digivolve one of your opponent's Digimon. Now, the theme is kind of one of the premier archetypes that plays around de-digivolving, which again is kind of cool, but it doesn't actually have any express synergies with this deck. It has no inheritables or anything like that. Other than being an unidentified Digimon, it doesn't actually contribute to your game plan, so we're going to leave that Inframon out and just talk about these three. So these are, again, the primary three that you're probably going to want to figure some kind of a ratio out for your personal build. Each one of them does have benefits. The first one, BT2 Inframon, says on your turn, when this Digimon would digivolve into a Diaboromon in your hand, reduce the memory cost by 1. So this is going to help you again go up into your scary final level 6 where all of your big splashy plays are going to be happening, and it's going to help you do that on less memory, which basically leaves more memory up to do other things with the turn. Now, whether you decide to use this or one of the others, again, is going to be kind of up to you. You may find that you have plenty of memory and you're never really hurting for that digivolve up and then immediately make plays, but maybe you are. We actually do play on level 7 that can benefit from having some memory left over after making the rest of your plays for the turn, so that effect may end up being one of the more beneficial ones that you see. Has no inheritable, but our next one does. We're going to move on to our EX1 Inframon. Now this guy has an opponent's turn effect once per turn. When an opponent's Digimon would digivolve into a level 5 or higher Digimon, gain a memory. So kind of a little mini floodgate effect. This is kind of weird because it's the only card in this effect that has that kind of an effect to it, where it's trying to hinder your opponent's plays rather than progress your own, which is kind of interesting. So basically, if they digivolve into anything that is ultimate level or above, they lose memory. So you're taxing them for digivolving up into higher levels. Again, kind of flavorful to the anime, where going all the way up into, where Greymon, them trying to digivolve up into their ultimate levels, kind of got their butts handed to them. Initially, when they tried to go into ultimate level, Inframon is actually the one that just completely blew away the Mega Kabuterimon and Metal Greymon before they could finish that Digivolution sequence. One of the few times you actually see that in the anime period. But I think that's supposed to be a cute nod to that, where it's trying to help prevent your opponent from digivolving up into those higher levels. Now, this does have a pretty useful inheritable. On all turns, all other Digimon with the same name as this Digimon get plus 2000 DP. This is actually the only effect in the deck that's going to buff the tokens. Now, whether or not you think that is worth it, again, is going to be up to you. I personally don't think it's super relevant. You might be able to maybe trade with some lower level Digimon just by giving them the extra 2000, so going from 3 to 5. However, on attacks, I don't think it's going to matter too terribly much, because your tokens are probably going to only be attacking when they're ready to die anyways. Keeping them around, I mean, if you happen to have your OTK turn stopped, I guess it's nice to keep the bodies around for the following turn, but I don't necessarily think the plus 2000 is the most relevant effect that you're going to find at this level. That being said, I don't necessarily think any of the inheritables from this level are super meaningful. Level 5s are level 4, our level 4s and level 3s are where most of our big, impactful inheritables are coming from. This level, your level 5, is basically just trying to bridge the gap between your Korosaris up into your Diaboromons. Speaking of which, you can do that very easily with our last Inframon, which is, it has an effect on your turn. Your Caramon can digivolve into this card in your hand for a memory cost of 4, ignoring that card's digivolution requirements. So again, flavorful to the anime. Fun fact, in our war game, we actually never saw Korosarimon. It was never in the movie. Instead, what ended up happening is we have Caramon warp digivolve up into Inframon. So this is, again, a really cool nod to how things went in the movie. So basically, you have Caramon in play. For a cost of 4, you just skip over Korosari and go straight into Inframon. Sometimes this is helpful. Other times you may not want to do that, because again, Korosari is where a lot of our big and helpful inheritables are coming from. So you may not want to skip over the level 4s, but if you're ever finding yourself in a pinch and you just need to get more bodies on board, or you're just trying to do an early setup, get some tokens generated, this might be a good way to do that. Just skipping over, going right into the ultimate, and then immediately getting to bridge up into your Diaboromons at level 6. Again, this is kind of up to you. I'm not going to keep repeating it, but again, ratios are very much up to you guys. And the good news is there's one other really spicy card I've seen some people splashing that I really, really like in this deck, and that is going to be copies of Chimeramon. Now, Chimeramon may not seem like a good include for this deck. As I mentioned, it is really only 2 colors, and white is one of those colors. So he's only ever going to maximum be able to use his effect to decrease your opponent's Digimon by 2000 DP. And that tends to be one of his primary reasons to get run, is that DP reduction effect. However, the real big reason to play Chimeramon in this deck is harping back again to all of the value inheritables you're going to get from your Korosaris at level 4. So combining any two of those Korosaris into one stack and getting to have more than one of those effects in play in one stack is going to be huge and impactful. Not even mentioning the fact that if you do manage to pull off that DNA Digivolution, or even if you don't really, just going up into him for 4 memory, you can then tuck another one of your Digimon that is, I believe, level 5 or lower from your trash up underneath that stack to provide another value inheritable. So any deck that is very heavily built around setup, Chimeramon is actually very, very solid. Even though he may not get a lot from his color benefits effect, he's still going to be very invaluable for combining the inheritables you really want to see. And in the case of DNA Digivolution, again, bridging that gap between your level 4s and your Diaboromons, but doing it in a way that is free. You don't even have to worry about these Infamons. You can just go for free straight up into Diaboromon right after that. So really, really cool. If you decide to run different, again, combinations, be sure to let me know. I'm very curious to hear if you guys have been already playing Chimeramon and have had success with it. I've been trying, I think, 2 copies in my current list, and he's been okay. The times that you've been able to pull it off are super awesome, but you really need to be able to pull off the double Korosarimon to really get maximum value out of Chimeramon. But if you do pull it off, it feels great, and it really does help enable your top-end explosive plays. Speaking of which, let's already go ahead and get up into those explosive plays, shall we? Because the namesake of the deck, the card we all came to here to see, of course, is Diaboromon. This crazy-looking spider boy. We have 4 different variations of Diaboromon, and all 4 of these I think are playable to at least some degree. Now, some of these are definitely more valuable, and they all do vastly different things. They all have some kind of synergies with tokens, so we kind of need to read each one of them and kind of understand what they do, so you can understand and kind of decide for yourself which one of these you think is right for the deck that you're trying to build. As I mentioned, we can go control strategies, OTK strategies. There's lots of different ways to build this. Now, the first one I do think is the weakest of the lot, but we'll go ahead and talk about this guy. So BT2, very first set Diaboromon, has a when attacking effect, make one of the Diaboromon tokens. Now we'll go ahead and take the time to clarify all of the features of these tokens. To begin with, they are 14 play cost, 3000 DP, they are mega level, unidentified type, and unknown attribute. So they basically have all the same traits as a standard Diaboromon. The only difference is they are significantly weaker, of course. These are supposed to be clones. They are not meant to be the same power level, of course, as your base Diaboromon. Thank goodness, as many as this deck makes. And each one of these cards kind of interacts with those tokens in a different way. Now, this very first one has an all turns effect, where if this Digimon would be deleted in battle, you may delete one of your other Diaboromon to prevent this Digimon from being deleted. You can tell how old this card is because it's only from battle protection that you are able to delete that other token. In the earliest days, this card was really not great. There wasn't enough support to really make a Diaboromon deck work, and by the time Diaboromon got enough support to actually become its own archetype, unfortunately, this card was just very clearly power crept out. We have 3 other options that I think are significantly stronger. That doesn't mean you can't run this one, of course, but I do think it's significantly weaker than the other options you're going to have available to you here. Now, this one here is going to be the biggest playmaker that you'll probably want to run regardless of the way that you're building your Diaboromon deck. This is the only Diaboromon that has a security effect. If it is checked in security, you make a Diaboromon token. This is one of the easiest ways the deck has to make one of those tokens, where if it's checked in security, you get one for free, and it adds an extra one of those bodies to your board. But it also has an opponent's turn effect, where it gets most of its value from, where all of your other Digimon with the same name as this Digimon gain blocker. So all of your other Diaboromon gain blocker. So if you're making a wide board of, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10 tokens, each one of those now has the blocker ability and can stop your opponent's aggression. This is where Diaboromon gets a lot of its staying power from, and it's why it's able to compete against certain decks in today's meta. If you can actually get a successful setup where you can get up into this Diaboromon, and you have enough resources where you can make multiple tokens, you can then create a board that is very hard to punch through. So this is going to be your big centerpiece for your control style builds, but even in OTK variants, I still suggest running quite a few of these because having the extra names on board is of course helpful, and again, this is a setup deck, and he's going to help you actually stall long enough to get to your OTK turns. This Diaboromon, our promo Diaboromon, this is our OTK enabler. Now, in the early days of Digimon, this card was very inaccessible. I believe it was like $80-something when it first came out. So this card was very expensive for a good long while. Thankfully, it did get a reprint and is now hovering around 10. So it's not super cheap, but it's definitely cheaper than it used to be. So this Diaboromon only has one effect. It's very simple. For every other Diaboromon you have in play, this Digimon gets security attack +1. So this is where I mentioned earlier on those Caramon effects. So let's say that we're playing a game and we have our Caramon on board that gives us +1,000 for every other Diaboromon that we have in play once we reach this level. That's already by itself quite a bit of DP gain. So it's easy to, again, gain, 3,000-4,000. That easily puts this Diaboromon over 15,000 without even having to do a whole lot outside of just playing the game. And that's not taking into account potential Sumimon inheritables or any other things like that. So he can already get very, very large. And each one of those other tokens, as I mentioned, is going to give security attack +1. So just by putting, 2 or 3 other tokens into play, you're already getting close to the point where you can potentially OTK, especially if you have other inheritables like our EX1 Corsarimon. It's almost like they were made to combo well together, where if you swing in with this Diaboromon, check even just say 2 security, then you swing in with or no, let's say 3, because you have let's say you have 2 tokens in play in this guy, so you check 3. Then you swing in with one of your tokens to check a 4th security. That dies, this unsuspends, swing in, check another security, and then you have 1 token left to finish the game with. So you can probably already see it honestly doesn't even take that much setup. Just with 2 other tokens and this guy in play, if you have a Russian heritable or if they've been in play for a turn, you can already OTK just off of that small of a board. So this guy does close games out shockingly fast. He is going to be the way that you're going to actually end up winning a lot of the games that you're trying to play with this deck. So it's super, super valuable. I think definitely irreplaceable. Like I said, if you're going the OTK route, you're going to probably want, well, maybe not more than like 2 or 3. Because realistically, if he comes down, you should be ending the game on that turn. So I would say 2, maybe 3 copies in an OTK strategy. But realistically, even in the OTK build, where you're going to be building around this guy, you're still going to want to have copies of these 2 for your setup. Now, our final Diaboromon here is a little simpler than the other 3. But he is definitely a valuable one, and you'll see why. It's worth noting, by the way, I haven't mentioned it, but these 3 are all 3 costs to Digivolve. This one is 4. So 3 costs to Digivolve. When you're playing other tokens, you'll gain potentially memory back from one of your other Kurosarimons. But this guy, when Digivolving, immediately plays a Diaboromon token. So rather than doing it on attack, you do it when Digivolving. And in my personal opinion, I think that is way, way stronger. It may not seem stronger, but think about it in this way. You don't have to attack with this and make it vulnerable to get that value. You can basically Digivolve up into him. You're going to get your tokens regardless, and then it's up to you how you want to spend the rest of your turn. Whether you want to be aggressive with this Diaboromon, if you want to be aggressive with your tokens, or if you want to make a level 7 play. Speaking of which, we're going to go ahead and talk about our level 7, because there's really only one that this deck wants to be running. Some builds run it, some don't, but I personally think he is absolutely worth it. Our level 7 is called Armageddon. Now this Digimon is the Digivolution form of Diaboromon. He goes up into this. Armageddon is actually from a later movie where Diaboromon comes back in the 02 series. I honestly don't remember quite as much about that movie as I do about Our War Game, but it was still a pretty good watch. Again, highly recommend looking it up if you have not had the opportunity to. So this is a pretty cool level 7, in the sense that you are never really going to be using him in the way you would typically use a level 7. He is 15 to play and 15,000 DP, which is pretty standard for our level 7s. He's only 3 to Digivolve from a black or a white level 6. That's relevant, of course, because, again, our Diaboromons are all white. They are not black. Oh, actually, we have 1 singular black Diaboromon. I literally did not notice that until this moment. But yeah, we have 1 black Diaboromon and 3 white. That's probably why they did that. But each one of our Diaboromon is going to be black or white. The tokens are all white. So he has an effect where on play, by deleting one of your other copies of Diaboromon, you can reduce his play cost by 12. By 12. He is 3 to play. It is important to mention that is not gaining memory, that is reducing the play cost. So you do not need to have 5 memory to hard play this guy. All you need is 3. So if you have a Diaboromon in play, you can delete one of them, bring this guy down, and he has Rush. So again, when he comes into play, he can attack immediately. So if you have swung in with some tokens, and one of them happens to have survived, if you have 3 memory up, slam down an Armageddon, delete the token that survived. He can now rush, and he has an extra attack for only 3 memory. He's basically a hybrid, if you will. Black does not have a whole lot in the hybrid department, but boy howdy does this guy make up for it in this particular archetype. Deleting another one of your Diaboromon to make him only 3 to hard play from your hand is absolutely nuts. Now again, not every Diaboromon deck is going to be running Armageddon. I personally do run 2 copies in my build. I think he is phenomenal as a curve topper. He also has a really relevant effect. All turns, the when digivolving effects of level 7 Digimon don't activate. That basically means that if your opponent is trying to digivolve up into things like Omnimon, even Alphamon Oryuken, Gallantmon Crimson mode, they're on digivolving effects that would be deleting things or gaining them advantage, don't happen. This stops almost every single level 7 out there, because the whole gimmick behind most level 7s is they have a big impactful on Digivolution effect. Removing that basically neuters or invalidates the level 7s your opponents are potentially playing. Now, to be fair, level 7s are currently, again, BT9 format, are currently not seeing nearly as much play as they used to. With that being said, this card is always kind of there in Diaboromon's back pocket, just in case level 7s ever do become back into prominence in the meta again. That's not to say that, again, they do still exist. You'll still see them every once in a while in certain archetypes. Stops Blitz Omnimon from unsuspending. That, again, is a nice little synergy there. But don't sleep on Armageddon. It's absolutely worth playing. Like I said, I've had a lot of success with it in my times playing with Diaboromon. I personally would definitely consider at least running 1 or 2 copies, if not more. This card is super awesome. Like I said, you can delete tokens, so if you have tokens put into play, even in other ways other than our Diaboromons, you can delete them for free, and then you get another free attack. So he's really great for closing the game out, and yeah, that is going to facilitate the general OTK, control, whatever you want to do. This is kind of what you're going to be looking at when you're working on a Diaboromon deck. We have a very unique playstyle, and one of the coolest level 7s you'll see up until this point. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up talking about our level 6s. Get him back up there. And we're going to start talking about more of the support that you're going to need in order to play a proper Diaboromon deck. To begin with, we'll talk about our Tamers. Now, there's 4 specific ones I want to talk about. The most important is, of course, going to be Arata Sonata. This is the named Tamer for the deck that specifically supports the Diaboromon archetype. He is 3 to play. At the start of your turn, if you have a Digimon with unidentified in its types in your trash, gain a memory. So each one of these that you have in play can potentially stack you more memory, and as long as you have played the game to the point where any of your Digimon are in your trash, he is going to start gaining you memory every turn. So it starts to accumulate and starts to enable those really powerful higher end plays. But his second effect is really what makes this card super vital for the strategy, and is why you'll want to play no less than 4 copies ever in a Diaboromon deck. His effect says, on your turn, when one of your Digimon digivolves into Diaboromon, you may suspend this Tamer to play a Diaboromon token. So again, as many of these as you stack, every time you go up into your Diaboromon, you can suspend this and just start dropping tokens onto the field. This is what really enables you to swarm and, again, enable some of those OTK plays. The OTK Diaboromon with security attacks, if you digivolve up into him, have 2 of these in play, there you go. You have officially got your ability to OTK right there. You've got 3 checks, 4 checks, 5 checks potentially. That's a lot of damage. Again, this is going to depend on what other inheritables you have, what other Tamers you have in play, how much memory you had at the start of the turn. All of these, of course, play roles in that final turn that you're going to try to push for the win, but you need Arata most of the time in order to get there. Playing those extra tokens is how you are going to get off the ground and establish your board presence before you ultimately lose the game, before you can win it. Now, there are some other things I want to talk about. First of all, I do think it's valuable to be playing some memory Tamers in this deck. Even though Arata is great gaining your memory every turn, making sure that you start at 3 guarantees you can at least digivolve up into something and still have other things to do. Now, the 2 memory Tamers we're playing, I've previewed both of them in other videos. I think they're just generically the best splashable level 4 memory setters right now. Those are going to be Kiyoshiro and Hiru. Now, both of these guys are, of course, memory setters. If your start of your turn memory is less than 2, set it to 3. Each of these also has an on-attacking effect, where if your Digimon attacking is level 5 or higher, and your tokens do count, You can suspend them to draw a card in the case of Kyushiro, or gain 2,000 DP in the case of Hero. Basically going to help you, again, get over potentially threatening security checks. So if you don't have EX1 Caramon in your OTK Diaboromon stack, Hero is going to help you get up and over that. Meanwhile, Kyushiro, if you're playing more of a control build, is going to help build your hand back up, get you advantage, and help you see the cards that you need to see. Either one of these I think is fine, and if there are other memory set tamers that you would like to play, you are, of course, more than welcome to. I did want to mention that there is, of course, the Black Izzy that exists, where you check your top 3 when it's played. If all of them are black and gain a memory, you are welcome to play Black Izzy. However, it is worth mentioning that, again, since most of our Diaboromon are white, you may not necessarily get the free memory off of that every single time. And because he doesn't have another in-play effect, he's just gaining you memory if you're lucky enough to check 3 blacks, then I don't know. I don't think the Black Izzy is quite as worth it as these guys are. I personally would rather just go ahead and have the other good in-play effects, just because we don't really care what color our Tamers are. You could, of course, maybe run Grumblemon if you want to be spicy and try to end the game after an OTK turn by winning with a hybrid. You may want to have more Black Tamers, but outside of that specific niche, I personally would stick to some combination of these guys. Now, the other Tamer that, of course, you can also run is Analog Youth. I don't see too many Diaboromon decks running Analog Youth, and I don't know why. It lets you tutor for, again, any of the Digimon from any of your levels, so it's really nice for smoothing out your stack building. It also when it enters, you look at your top 3, add any Digimon to your hand, and trash the rest. This also conveniently helps to set up your Errata Sonata. So if your opponent is trying to avoid killing off your stack so you don't get that extra memory early, playing an Analog Youth can basically turn those erratas on before your opponent may have expected it to. Being able to drop things into your trash early is going to help you get your gas flowing a little bit sooner, which is, of course, going to help with your speed. As I mentioned, that is one of the big things that this deck struggles with, is speed. Now, in my top 5 wish list, I had asked you guys in the comments to tell me what kind of things you were hoping to see more support received for in the future. And Diaboromon was actually brought up by multiple people. There is a Diaboromon X line that would absolutely be really cool for new support. I would really love to see that and help support with this theme of, building these stacks faster. That's really, I think, what this deck needs. It needs more tutors so you can see your correct pieces, and it needs things that will actually speed the deck up. And X Digivolution and being able to use Cool Boy and things like that, maybe that could be the thing that this deck needs. I would be happy to see that, and we'll definitely be sure to make a video about those spoilers if we ever do see them in future sets. But for now, we're just going to have to cross our fingers and hope for the best. These are, in my opinion, the best 4 Tamers you're going to want to run in a Diaboromon list. But of course, if there are others out there that interest you and you think could have good synergies, try them out, and please let me know down in the comments. I want to know what other spicy tech you guys have come up with for Diaboromon and how much success you've been able to see with it. This deck is really cool, and I do think you could potentially, if you get really good with this deck, take down a couple of maybe small events. You're not going to win anything big with it, but despite how low the floor is for this deck, it also does have a very big ceiling. Back in kind of the BT7 format, which in my opinion was probably the best chance Diaboromon had, up until this point at least, to start doing well, it was kind of regarded as the more like glass cannony version of Jessamon, where you're trying to set up these crazy OTK turns, right? But the floor of the deck, it can brick much, much harder, and it's also a lot slower. But on the other side, if you actually manage to get up into a very powerful OTK turn, this has one of the strongest burst turns that you can actually find in the Digimon TCG, thanks to all of those extra security checks on a single body, with very little setup actually needed for that particular play. So, just something to mention. I do think this deck is really cool. I just want to keep talking about it. So, we're going to talk about option cards last. There are plenty of viable black option cards that you can play in your particular list, but the 4 that I'm going to be talking about are what I think are going to be the most common choices that you're going to want to consider. Just because there's only so many flex spots, I think these 4 are probably going to be the best for you. We are skipping over Black Memory Boost because, again, Diaboromon is white and cannot be added off of Black Memory Boost, but we are still playing a Memory Boost, and that is Pride Memory Boost. Now, Pride Memory Boost, if those of you unfamiliar, this does see a lot of play in decks like D-Brigade, but it reveals your top 3 cards. You can play any black Digimon card from among those with a play cost 4 or less without paying its memory cost. So if you hit a champion or lower that costs 4, you can put it in for free, which is basically, again, just free memory. And then, of course, sits in your raising area or your battle area, and lets you on a future turn sack it to gain 2 memories to again help to enable those top end plays. That's really the primary reason, but it's worth noting that the other 2 cards that you check, if you hit something and bring it into play, the other 2 cards you check get trashed. So again, Pride Memory Boost is a nice way to set up your Errata Sonata memory gains without actually needing your opponent to destroy something that you control. Next up, we're going to have our primary security threats in the form of the pretty common black option card, Ultimate Flare. Those of you who don't know, this card is just 8 to play. De-Digivolve 3 on one of your opponent's Digimon, then destroy all of your opponent's Digimon with play cost 3 or less. Now, in our current X-Antibody format, this card is not super phenomenal just because they do have so many multiple instances of the same level. You're not going to get low enough to kill something very often. On a normal stack outside of the X-Antibody archetype, you could potentially go from Mega, then you would De-Digivolve Ultimate, Champion, and then Rookie, and chances are you're probably just going to kill that stack, plus potentially other things. Now that, of course, you can put extra level 4s on your level 4s and extra level 5s on your level 5s, it's less likely you're going to get that low again. However, I've already mentioned in a previous video that with our upcoming BT10 format quickly approaching, there's going to be a lot more stacks that are going to be lower to the ground. I think Ultimate Flare is going to see a resurgence. I think this card is going to come back into play in a very big way. And it's extra flavorful, of course, in the Diaboromon archetype because this is the signature attack of Armageddon, which is the level 7 of choice for this deck. Now, we also do have Diaboromon signature attack as another option card, and that is Catastrophe Cannon. Now, Catastrophe Cannon is 4 to play. Instead of 3, you will De-Digivolve 2 on one of your opponent's Digimon. Then, if you have a Diaboromon in play already, you get a Diaboromon token. This is the only option card that is going to help make Diaboromon tokens. Now, I'm not huge on this card just because you do need to already have a Diaboromon in play in order to get another token. And if you've already got a Diaboromon in play, if you're not playing Control, if you're playing OTK, you're going to want to try to win on the turn that you're going into Diaboromon. So it's going to feel like probably a little too late at that point. That doesn't mean you can't use this card. If they check it in security, it's still a De-Digivolve 2, but I do think this card is a little bit better in the control versions of Diaboromon that are trying to just grind the game out and win with a wide board instead of a single burst turn, just because you're more likely to actually be able to play this and already have the Diaboromon in play. So in your hand, you're going to be able to use it more often. Now, the last option card I want to talk about, and the last card I'm going to be discussing for this particular video, is an option card that has started seeing pretty widespread play in any decks playing black, and that is Kongao. Now, I am trying to find a good home for this deck. I am considering trying it out in my Machine Dramon list, but I haven't gotten the motivation to do it just yet. But this card is very, very good. Absolutely being just completely open. It is a very strong card. It only costs 2 to play. Still has the security effect. All of these guys just activate the main effects, of course, except for the memory boost. But the main effect is, until the end of your opponent's turn, your opponent's Digimon with play cost 7 or less cannot attack players, and cards cannot be added to security stacks by your opponent's effects. This is a very powerful effect. Not only is this going to be a pseudo fog for my Magic fans out there, where they can't attack you with Digimon 7 cost or less, which is a shocking number. Pretty much everything that is not either X-Antibody level 5 or Mega level or up, everything below that probably won't be able to attack you, but it also prevents your opponent from recovering for the turn. So if you are, trying to grind your opponent down, you get them to that last 1 or 2 security, and then you end your turn on a Kongao, they can't recover to come back out of it. Our locals right now is actually becoming very populated by yellow and purple control decks that tend to recover a lot. I actually had a matchup yesterday at our locals where I had a yellow-purple player at the top table recover all the way up to 12 security at one time. So Kongao preventing those recovery effects can be very relevant. I would not count this card out. It is definitely powerful. So you may want to try to find spots for that in your Diaboromon deck if you are trying to stall for that OTK turn. So again, just something to consider. Anyways, with that, I want to thank you all once again for joining me for another deep dive video. These are longer, but it seems like you guys are enjoying them, so I'm going to keep trying to make these as new archetypes come out. I've got lots more videos coming down the pipeline. I'm going to start doing some more looking forward future archetype deck profiles. There are a lot of decks coming up in the new sets, BT10, EX3, and BT11 with some very exciting archetypes, so I want to start doing some content on those. As we do get closer to BT10, I absolutely plan on doing a box opening once we actually get to the set's release. So if you enjoy box openings, look forward to that. I will absolutely be participating in that particular trend. I just want to give one more big thank you to Zeke from Coyotemon Plays for spotting me, my very first donation ever. When I started the channel, I didn't even consider donations as being a part of it. He had to message me privately on Discord to even broach the subject. Since then, I do want to mention that I have put a donation link up on the description for my channel. It is a PayPal donation link. You will never hear me ask for donations on this channel. Please do not feel in any way obligated, but if you want to support me and the channel, that is an easy way that you can do that. I'm, as mentioned, continuing to try to grow not only my channel's size and my content quality, I'm going to try to grow my production value as well. You guys seem like you're still having fun and enjoying the videos, so I'm going to keep trying to do right by you guys and make sure these videos are enjoyable for you to watch. Just as another reminder, we are officially starting a weekly live stream most Thursdays. We're going to try to do it every Thursday if we can. We are going to be doing a Digimon Bumble Arena, Digimon TCG gameplay live stream. If you guys are interested in stopping by, watching some fun, janky brews, and just seeing specific matchups that you are interested in, please feel free to stop by and check out those live streams. We're going to be streaming every Thursday if we can, somewhere around 6:30, maybe 7 o'clock. I'll make sure to post the streams a day or two ahead of time so you guys have a good idea of when those live streams are going to be happening. So with that, thank you all one last time. I appreciate all of the support. If you guys enjoyed the video, leave a like, comment down below, and let me know what you would love to see another deep dive video on. With that, I am an avid herpetologist. Thank you all so much, and I will see you guys next time.